But the punchline to this is that you spent 20 years in prison.
Yeah, 18 and a half.
18 and a half.
You want to round it off, but that was as an adult. That was my last time getting in some trouble.
Okay. And we'll get to the reasons as to why that is. Yeah, welcome to Who Versus. We've got a very special guest today, Kevin. James and I wanted him on because he's lived kind of an extraordinary life. Mm-hmm. He's been all over. He's done a lot of interesting things that we wanted to talk to him about, and he wanted to talk about as well. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Yeah, well, great to be here.
I don't know. I was thinking we would start at sort of the beginning of the story. I know before the cameras were rolling, we were talking about it a little bit, but how, you had a good reputation. Were you like a kind of like a wild child, like kind of a rascally kid?
Well, I guess you could say that. Yeah. I guess you could say that. Pretty aggressive. A lot of attention. You had to pay a lot of attention to me because I was always into things.
Yeah.
But, I was just, I guess you could just say, for a word, better use of words, just a wild child. I was just pretty kind of wild at that time, but I was young, so
Right.
Were you the kind of kid that like teachers were always having to discipline and they couldn't quite figure you out?
Exactly.
Okay.
The kind that you have to put your seat, my chair, beside the teacher's desk.
Yeah.
They had to pull me because I was always, doing something.
I probably should have done a better intro for you. I guess we'll get there. But the punchline to this is that you spent 20 years in prison.
Yeah, 18 and a half.
18 and a half.
You want to round it off, but that was as an adult. That was my last time getting in some trouble.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll get to the reasons as to why that is. But, James and I were talking about this yesterday, and we were sort of thinking, like, when's the first time that you as a young man sort of started to, when was your first crime?
Oh, excuse me. As a juvenile, as an adult,
or when did you start thinking, like, you know what, I'm gonna do crimes for?
Well,
and I'm not talking about like throwing a rock.
I guess you can say I started. We have a laundromat. Just little petty things like a laundromat. I used to break into machines and take extra change out because my mom, my mom didn't work, so my dad, took care of all the bills and all that, and we didn't have money, to really be able to. We did well, we did okay, but wasn't a whole lot of extra money, and there was things that I wanted, and I, sometimes when they didn't have it, I just found ways to get it other ways.
Yeah. And so you just had a need for a few more comfort items. And how old were you when this was happening? It was like early teens, preteen?
When I was in elementary, our school, my elementary school was right down the street. Like you could like literally walk down the street and that's, be at school. So it started in elementary. So I was like, maybe like what, third, fourth grade.
Okay. That's the age of one of my kids. That's like 8, 9 years old.
Well, let me see. Yeah, I'll probably say third to fourth, no more than fourth at least. I say fourth.
And so you're just sort of like shoplifting here and there?
Breaking up and change machine.
I've always paid attention to ways to be able to try to, get some extra money when I was out the house. And so we have a laundromat around the corner from our house. Right to this day, every store in our neighborhood I was borrowed out of, most of them. My mom didn't know sometimes that she'd ask me to go around there and get me some cigarettes. And she said, why you take so long to come back? I had to find somebody. I had to find somebody to go in the store for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I couldn't go in that store and I couldn't go in this one. I couldn't go in that. Get some cigarettes for me, or if I go to the Safeway, it's a guy in there waiting for me to come back in there because I done stole something. He's, like, hey, you better not come back in here. Mm-hmm. So.
It's weird. It's like you talk about you were always looking for ways to make extra money. When I was 10 years old, when I wanted to make extra money, I started mowing lawns or doing.
I was getting ready to say, don't tell me a paper route.
I guess that's my question is like, why do you decide actually what I'm good at is like hustling and stealing? Like, because if your dad's working, mom's at home, this kind of seems like the perfect, no family's perfect, but like a great situation. Why did you go down that road as opposed to saying, I can get somebody to buy me cigarettes even though I'm underage. So you understand people enough to do that.
Why did you go down that? For me, for
right. But I was just saying,
you got people skills.
You got people skills. You can talk to them. I need cigarettes for my mom. They didn't know if it was for your mom or for you, but you've got those people skills. What made you want to go down that route instead of mowing lawns or sweeping streets or sweeping people's driveways or paper routes? What was it about that 9-year-old that's like, this is it for me?
Well, I've always been a lot more advanced than my peers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I knew I was more like a leader early on.
Yeah.
Because I didn't follow too much. Eventually, we all follow at some point. Later on, somebody. We see things, gangster movies, and we see these kind of things, and we mimic ourselves. And oh boy, yeah, I like that. And you watch these movies and this one, and you see it, and you go out there and try these things, and you want, But it innately, I think, when it's something is inside of you, it'll come out in different ways.
Yeah.
You'll, whether it's from TV or your surroundings, your area, the people you're around. And I think because my dad, my mom and them, they couldn't really give me, money that I probably wanted when I wanted it. But we had we ate, we wasn't poor, we were okay, but I didn't have a lot of patience, and, at this time, the pressures, the peer pressure of having to, of fashion. And at that time, that was an issue with me. Trying to keep up with the styles. I was a bit of a class clown. People would say now comedian. That's a gift. That's one of my gifts. I'm 61, I still have it. I never looked at it as a gift until I got wise and old enough to realize it was something that God gives of all of us talents and gifts. It's up for us to figure out what it is.
Right.
Like you guys are doing what you're doing now, and this is maybe one of your talents. But I realize now that I've had several talents of my own that I just never thought about, pursuing them in that way. But as I got older, I was like, well, maybe I should. People tell me I should have been a comedian, But I was too busy trying to be a tough guy because the lane that I chose and the route that I chose to go, it wasn't about no comedians. And when nobody was laughing and playing about that, this was serious. If you're going to be out in the streets and you're going to be stealing and people are going to take things from you and try to so you have to be tough. And, so I had to be a guy that I really didn't want to be. But you see how that turned out for me.
But that's, I personally, that's what I'm interested, right? So we were talking before the cameras are on, like you had to keep up a persona or a reputation because people are going to take things from you or take advantage of you because you're sort of like, you're in the street or in the game or whatever, right? So you've got to project power, right?
Exactly.
And you were a natural leader, you were saying. Did you have when you were young, did you convince your buddies to help you in any of this stuff or you were kind of doing it on yourself?
Well, I did things on my own. My father, I think when they realized that, from the whoopings I used to get, the chastisements and it wasn't, they thought I really had some issues. It was like something wrong with this boy, because, when you constantly getting beatings and, punishments, and it's like it didn't change. Like register.
Didn't take.
It's like he go right back and do it again, and they'll call from school and be like, he's told us stuff out to steal in this time, and then my mother would threaten me and be like, when your father gets home, I'm going to let him know what you're not. I would,
Were you when she would say that? I know when my wife says that to my kids, it ruins the rest of their day. When your mom would tell you when your father gets home, you're in trouble. Would you fear that, or were you just saying,
of course,
I'll take my beating and then go?
Of course I did. It's funny because as tough as I was in the streets, much didn't scare me. I used to fight a lot, and I was real. You can have a bad reputation and things like that, but when you get home, you're humble. When and that's one thing that I can say when it comes to my parents. I was tough in the streets, and I was the man. I'm not the man, but I was kind of like that guy out there. But when I got home, I knew better to kind of like with my father and be disrespectful, and I mean, I would like pout sometimes, and I just whisper a little stuff under your breath. And what'd you say?
Yeah.
But other than that, I would, and so it was like night and day. It's like really some of the things that I was accused of, my parents and them couldn't, but they could and they couldn't believe it because it's like when he gets in here, he don't do that in here, even though I have my little way, but So I think every parent, there's things about your children that you have no idea what they're doing outside of that home.
I mean, that's how it was for me growing up. Like I was the same way, you know, respectful and played by the rules that my parents were providing a house I was living in and putting food on the table. I couldn't get too crazy, but when I was out of that house, it was like my world now. I was doing different stuff, but similar idea, you know?
You're riding a bicycle without a helmet?
Yeah,
real,
like
real,
wild,
real bad.
wild things. But I think I'm super interested in, so you had a good reputation on the street. What does it take to get that reputation, maintain it, and like how did people like challenge you in that? Like, let's talk about respect, I guess, is what it is, right?
Well,
respect's everything.
That's a good question. First of all, you have to accept, if not all, most challenges. Mm-hmm. First of all, you can't fear pretty much anything because once one person, other people are going to be watching you as well. You know, your peer group meaning. Yeah. So if you want to be popular amongst your peers, they have to see you consistently being that way, and they have to see other guys as tough like you or tougher than you, respecting you. Mm-hmm. If they see that, you know, that's letting them know that, you know, hey, this guy, he's pretty.
Yeah, he's the real deal.
Yeah, he's pretty tough. He's pretty serious about what he's into. So, you know.
Yeah. Basically, you can't show weakness, right? You can't back down from a challenge of a fight or whatever, right?
Do you remember the first time that you were really challenged in a major way? I'm not talking like petty stuff when you were 8, 9 years old, but I'm talking like when you were really out there. Do you remember your first big challenge to make sure people knew they couldn't mess around with you?
Well, I've had quite a few. Mm-hmm. So I'll just choose one. Let me see. Well, I don't like telling this.
You don't have to be super specific.
Well, I guess you could call it extorting. I was extorting guys in my school when I was in elementary, and I was kind of young. I knew that the principal and the people at the school wouldn't probably believe because these guys were a little bigger than me, but because I was, you know, kind of aggressive, like I was. I mean, you know, size didn't really matter to me because when I started going into these little juvenile places and watching other guys, you know, getting taken advantage of, I knew that wasn't going to ever be me. Mm-hmm. I always said to myself, you know, I used to go to sleep sometimes, my fist balled up. You know, I wouldn't, you know, go to sleep because I've seen guys, you know, take advantage of guys, you know, physically and, you know, and thank goodness I knew a lot of guys because when you come in and out of the system a lot as a juvenile, when you come back, you know how guys be like, hey, man, you back, man? It's like it's like family thing. Mm-hmm. I had to say family, but, you know, they become like your peer group, your friends and your family. So people got familiar with me. So and being as though I guess it worked out because I end up showing a pattern of coming back and forth, in and out. So that kind of worked in my favor, I guess, you know, coming in and out of there and guys remembering me and, hey, man, you back? Hey, you give me some tap. Man, yeah. He's never left. They still there from when I left 6 months ago or whatever. Gosh. These guys still, I mean, yes, you know, it was just a ongoing kind of thing where as though, you know, I don't even know if I could stop it if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, it's like once you get a bite of some blood or taste of something, you just, you know.
Yeah, you keep going back.
There's no going back, yeah. Can't turn something good bad and something bad good. But later on, you know, as time went on, when I got the long stretch, when I went in and did all the time. Now because I was in and out all my life, mostly, since I was young. This time, you might say, well, what was different about this last time? Well, what was different was I did a long stretch. I never did that long. I think the longest I did when I went to Lorton, they gave me 1 to 3. I had robbery, use of a firearm, and the possession of a crime, abduction, which is kidnap. I had all kind of charges, and they were in different states, Maryland, Virginia. You know, I was going. You know, I was out there. I was going in different places doing things, and I was very materialistic, to be honest. You know, because my mom and my dad, they couldn't afford to get me the things that I liked to wear, I wanted to wear. So when they get me things I didn't like, and my mom said, you're not going to school for a fashion show. You're going to school to learn. And I wanted, you know, the stuff you guys are wearing, the brand name stuff, the Levi's and all that, and the Lees. I didn't want no Wranglers with the W on them. I wanted the Levi's, Lees.
Yeah.
Those were brand name back then.
Yeah.
So, you know, my parents couldn't afford to give me all those things, but I had nice things. I got some nice stuff, but I got, you know, stuff that they could afford.
And your parents didn't have any questions why a 10, 11, 12-year-old boy without any obvious source of income was coming home with nicer clothes, or, you know, maybe
Well, they
like,
did.
you know, if your mom was anything like my mom, she would snoop around your room.
Where'd you get that?
Where'd you get all this money? Like, they didn't start asking you questions?
No, well, it's ironic you asked that, but she didn't snoop around my room, but because moms, you know, they pay a lot of attention when you think, because my mom, when I dress, and see, I started dressing and leaving the house where they couldn't see me. So when they would say, where you get that from? I didn't buy that. Or where'd you get that shirt? And she would ask me those things, and I would just tell her, my friend let me wear it. And then that got old, because, you know, and then when I started getting in trouble, she started, and, you know, that excuse explained where my stuff was coming from, because when the police started bringing me back or calling saying he's done this and done that didn't work anymore about the friend thing. You're stealing things.
Yeah.
Right. Let's fast forward maybe a little bit to your adult life, right? So you're in and out in juvenile doing this stuff, but then you get what you call the long stretch, right? So what's the difference, or talk us through the mentality? You're going to real prison for a real long time, right? How do you prepare for that mentally? I mean, you're already a tough guy. You have your reputation. How do you get prepared for, I'm in with a lot of tough guys now?
Well, I was already being prepared as when I was getting, so I was kind of ready. It's like school. You start off and it's good. So I was learning as I went when I was younger. So by the time I got there, I kind of knew what was going on. I was kind of ready for it. Now these guys are older now, like I am. These some of the same guys that, you know, we ran across each other when we were younger. Now we're just older.
Wow.
We were 10, 11, we were 11, 12, 13. Now we're 17, 16.
When would you say was your peak time of when you felt the most comfortable on the street, robbing, doing that kind of stuff? Like, when did you feel you had reached maturity?
Yeah, like you made it.
Like you kind of made it as a criminal where no one could cross you, no one could out hustle you. You were like the alpha apex of what you were doing. How old were you?
I would have to say probably maybe like in my late teens.
Wow.
My late teens, you couldn't tell me too much. By then I was like, I'm, you know, I'm that guy. So they people kind of seen it, because my, you know, early on childhood, you know, they seen the consistency, and they seen it wasn't going to stop no time soon. And well, it fits them. So, you know.
Is there anything you wouldn't do to make money? So robbing, you know, breaking into people's houses. Did you have like a line you wouldn't cross as far as the kind of crime for money?
One thing that I can say about that I am proud to say, that I know of, I've never killed anyone, and you know, I've done some things I'm not proud of, but I've never done that, and so yeah, I've pretty much done a lot, but that right there, I kind of draw a line.
Yeah,
you know, I broke into a lot of things. A lot of times, the people around where we live at, and matter of fact, actually my sister's in there, and I know she probably hurt me for it. We had a next door neighbor, and she used to go out of town a lot, and they were like pack rats. I mean, they had a lot of nice stuff though, but they had a lot of stuff in there, and they were of course friends with my parents. But they wasn't as close to me like I would, like my other next door neighbor on the other side. I was close to them. But this one, you know, we were all right, but not like that. So one summer, she went out of town, and they were never home. And I was just always into something, trying to figure out a way to get something to come up, meaning to come up. And I said, you know what? Just out of curiosity, I wanted to go in there and see what was in there, because I seen her give these silver dollars to the little girl who was next door in there. I said, and she always had those. And I went in there, and I ended up, you know, she was never home. And I waited, and I plotted how to go in there, and they're right next door to me. And I felt like I hit the jackpot, because she had big change jars with silver dollars.
Wow.
And was a lot of.
It's like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was a lot of and you know, for a kid like young like myself,
Sure.
that was like a big come on. That was one of my biggest scores when I was young, I would say, and I'm ashamed of it now because you know, people looking at this probably saying he went in somebody's house next door, a neighbor. That's supposed to have been his neighbors, but when you're young, you don't think about a lot of stuff until you get a little older.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, and then I found the gun in there. I took that. Along with some other material stuff, what happened was I found some little books, some little adult books, you know, 'cause I was flipping mattresses, which kind of advanced me early on because seeing it, you know, now that's another thing in my head. I'm seeing that and I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'd share that with my buddies. Look at this. But I was so young, they didn't have color then. So it was black and white.
Wow.
It was black and white pictures.
Yeah.
You know, some adult stuff, and I took I got that and went on the match. I found a gun, you know, the jars with the chains. I just kind of not cleaned her out, but I took a nice amount of stuff, and they never did find out I did. They found out later on that I did it, but by then, you know, it made my mom and them look bad, you know, and that's what I regret as well, you know, how it reflects on, you know, the things that I would tell any kids now, the problematic children. You know, what you do, it reflects on your parents.
Yeah.
You know, because they work so hard to try to raise you right. And I had good parents, and they tried the best. I was just an uncontrollable, wild child. And we have a lot of children like that. They got good and bad. It doesn't have anything to do with the parents. So if anybody's listening to this and anybody's watching this, parents, don't feel bad if some of your kids go left when you try to guide them down a straight path and bust your butts to work hard and make sure they have, you know, nice things in life. And they want to go out here and cut up and do stuff, and they don't really have to. Because I know a lot of kids that parents have money, but they just want to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And they get with the wrong crowds. And some of their people don't have money, the ones that's doing stuff, but your family have money. Why are you out here doing this? Hey, man, I want to be with y'all. You know, you want to fit in.
Yeah.
Just want to be a part of something. So.
Yeah. So for like guys like Phil and I, we sit at a desk all day or most of the day. Going to prison would probably be the worst. I mean, without question, like we would not survive well there. I mean, you figure the rules of a game out, you know, any environment, but like we don't have a great reputation for being tough.
I'll tell you this right now, Kevin, I have no reputation on the street.
Yeah.
So
that's
James
better than a bad one. But
James is right.
You were saying you prepared your whole life because probably the skills that you succeeded with on the streets, reputation, not backing down from a challenge, whatever, that probably translates over to prison. But guys like what would you tell someone like Phil and I? We're about to go to prison for something, you know, for example, like how do we what do we do? How do we make it? Like how do we live?
Why would you want to know how to make it in prison?
Well, I don't want to, but I think a lot of guys like us, like there's this threat, you know, particularly like for political crimes. Like we know people that have done like
white collar crimes,
like white collar crimes with literally just the wrong political.
To be clear, on the record, James and I are not committing any white collar crimes.
We're not, but we know Steve Bannon who went to jail, and that guy's not a violent criminal.
Yeah, I think what James is saying is like in the worst case scenario where like our worst fear happens, and let's say we end up going to prison for
whatever
20 years. What would you say to somebody who's like, okay, I'm going to prison. Let's just say, you know what? Let's say somebody has committed a crime. Say you were drinking and driving, and you killed the bystander. And let's say otherwise you have zero criminal record. You're as square as they come. But now you're facing, for whatever reason, the state you live in, drunk driving is a serious problem. You killed 2 people, and your blood alcohol was through the roof. You really messed up. But you're a square dude. How would you counsel that guy of how to come out the other end of this thing
rehabilitated and alive? You know.
Well, for starters, I would say to a guy like that is, you know, it's always good to stay in your lane. I mean, you know, the peer pressure is so great out there that first let me say this, you know, if I could do it over again, excuse me, I would have got most of the education that I needed to get, because if you're going to be a criminal or if you're going to be out in the street breaking the law, you need to know how to read and write. You know, because you can get all the money in the world if you don't know how to sign a check paper. If you don't know how to sign things, read things, comprehend, understand things, what good? You're just a criminal and you're tough, but your education level is people going. Then you can be taken advantage of. Maybe not physically,
Yeah.
but people will take advantage. When people see your weakness, that he's not too bright, he's tough, he's not too bright. So my advice would be, and not to encourage anybody.
No. I don't want that.
To be a educated criminal.
This is just a thought experiment of how a square guy would survive.
But I wish I could if I could do it over again, I would definitely try to make sure I educated myself a lot more, because later on down the line you're going to need it.
Yeah,
you're going to need that education. You guys sitting here now, you couldn't have got here being ignorant, being stupid. You have to have some form of education. You're going to have to fill out applications.
Yep.
You're going to have to read stuff and comprehend stuff and fill it out. You're going to have to go through this phase with somebody helping you all the time and people can't be around to hold your hand, all your life. So, I would say to a lot of people that want to be tough guys and want to educate yourself first and foremost. I mean, I can't go back and redo and undo nothing that I've done.
Sure.
I'm 61 now. Thank God I'm still around and I'm pretty healthy, and being through all that stuff, I've never really been hurt bad. I've been stabbed never been shot, but I've been stabbed. I've been banged up physically, whatever. I banged the people up physically and I've stabbed other people, but it's really, it's not a good way to start off trying to, live your life, because at some point now, excuse me, now I'm looking back on it. I have a daughter, I got grandkids, and, how do you explain something like that to your grandkids? Because they're going to ask questions, and
Sure.
they're going to, I don't know too many kids that don't want to be like not be like them, but, admire their parents
of course.
and their and you want to give them some incentive to do some positive things. You want to kind of hide that from them, but
Sure.
eventually everything comes out, at some point. You can try as hard as you can to kind of keep it away from them. So I guess the only way you can just be honest, and just so that hopefully that will deter them from, and let them know the pitfalls and the pit holes. And where I did all this, but look what it led me. Look what it took a lot of years away from me. I've spent many years in places waiting on visits. Didn't get a lot of visits because my parents and them, one working and transportation wise, coming to them places, 8-hour drives, and it was just too much. And but I made my bed, so I had to lay in it. So now I got to be a tough guy because I can't allow anybody to take advantage of me. So I'm in these places. I'm trying to make commissary. My mom and them, they can't send me money every week. Like some of the guys in prison, they got a lot of family that have money. They can get me. So now I got to be in there. I got to be a tough guy. So I'm in there hustling in there.
Yeah.
What does hustling look like in there?
Same thing in the streets.
Really?
Yeah.
Doesn't change.
Yeah. Well, you get to go to commissary, and you can take that and try to flip it like you would flip something in the street.
Okay.
And flipping meaning you want to try to turn it over and make more out of it. You go to the store and get 10 bags of potato chips and try to turn them into 30 bags, and you want to sell them to guys, you want to loan them out to guys.
Was that the currency? Potato chips from the
Well,
commissary?
not just potato chips.
Just any...
commissary is food. Commissary, summer sausages, tater chips, sodas. You get everything you can get, not everything, but you can get a lot of any kind of food, eat edible foods you can get. And they have commissaries and the bigger places you go, the broader variety of stuff you can get. As I got older and I started going into not the federal system, but the adult system, they have a broader variety of things that you can get for us. What you can, you'll be surprised.
You're making it sound like a 7-Eleven.
Well,
I mean,
not really. I don't think.
I mean, it's not really, but it seems like it has a lot of stuff in there that you would want.
Well, it's limited, but it's not. But it's things that you wouldn't think that. You think that, and they're eating bread and water.
Yeah, that's
people think bread and water in prison. No. They have commissaries, and
do you have cash when you're in there?
You're not supposed to have cash, but it's a lot of things you're not supposed to have in there. But,
sure.
Of course, people find ways to get things, you know. So, there's cash and currency, floating around. But, they stopped all the smoking in the prison systems.
Oh, really?
There's no more smoking cigarettes. It hasn't been for years now. They shut it down. No more smoking cigarettes. So when they were, cigarettes was a big currency in prison.
Were you in prison when they stopped that? When you could smoke and then couldn't smoke?
No, fortunately, I got out before all that started. Because the laws, the laws changed, and I went in 1987. I came back home in 2000. I just came home in 2005. Wow. But I've been doing pretty good this time since I've been home, and I'm working now. Matter of fact, my sister took my thing. I had to get into a place of business, but now, excuse me, now, but I work. I have 2 jobs now, as a matter of fact, and it's funny that I be thinking sometimes, why I didn't try this and do this, because. I like what I do now. That's why I got another job. I could have took all that energy and did all this a long time. And right about now, I would be ready to retire.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But because I spent so much time doing all that, and so what I've been now home, 20 years, where I'm at now in my life, I'm not complaining. I'm grateful, and I'm pretty blessed. But I could be a lot further if I had not been all those years wasted in those places.
You were talking about this yesterday, the Freakonomics guys.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about like the risks associated, like your biggest score. Let's just throw a random number down. I don't know if this is realistic, but like your biggest score is maybe like $10,000 or something in one thing or one. You could make that in a month or 2 working a regular job. If you think about it that way, but the risk was worth it for you. To go out and rob or whatever. I'm just interested. Did you ever think like, man, I could lose 20 years of my life for, stealing only a couple $1,000?
What? Do you think anybody thinks about things
it
before they do
no.
it when they do it?
No,
because there's a lot of people that commit crimes. If they would have stopped after they get in them precincts, and when the police are telling them, you're under this count 20 years, this count is in that. You think if they could do it over again, that they would, so nobody really thinks about it. I think it's just something, and that's the point. We all should think more before we act, but unfortunately we don't. So, it's part of life.
So how did you prepare to transition after your long stint in prison? Did they give you any resources to prepare to go out into society again, or you just have to figure it out?
No, you got to figure it out. And what's very important is it's a good question. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Family support.
Yeah.
If you have that, it's going to be difficult if you don't. And it could relapse. It could make you relapse. But some people do it. They still come home and do okay. But it's very essential. It's very important to have family support when you come home.
Is that what helped you?
Yeah, that's definitely what helped me, because my family didn't have a lot of money, but they were always there to send what they could when they could. But see, that made me in there have to do stuff too in there, because my family couldn't send me much, and I'm going to say this because my sister gonna kill me. She gonna, I love my sister. I do. Matter of fact, it's 5 of us. 2 of my siblings has passed away. I have a sister now, surviving sister, and my youngest brother. But my sister, she was nobody approved of my lifestyle and what I done, but they tried to do what they could. But it's almost like, I didn't put you there. So I'm not, when you get in those places, how you call home for money. One of your kids get locked up, or your brother, your sister, they on the call and ask everybody for money. And call, put him on the phone, put Uncle John on the phone, I'm gonna hit him for 20, I'm gonna hit him for 30, I'm gonna hit him. And I remember one time my sister, I was asking her, send some money, and my sister never really, I thought about it later. I was really like feeling some kind of way about the fact that, I thought she was thrifty and cheap, because my sister wouldn't, but my sister had a family and she couldn't be sending me no lot of money. And so my sister sent me one time, I think she sent me $10, $7, something. And I was like, you could have kept that in my mind, because in commissary, I probably can't get nothing but in her mind, she was like, I have a family.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take care of them. And I don't have money to be sending you. She didn't tell me that, but that's basically now that I'm mature and I'm able to look at it. So for people who get themselves in positions out there that's listening to this, think about that, because now when you're in them places, you expect for your family to send you money, and you're going to be calling home to different people, your uncles, your fathers, your grandfather. You're going to be calling everybody trying to get money because, you know, you want to be able to eat in there. You don't want to eat the prison food.
Like, can you talk about that? How you hear horror stories about how bad it is. How bad is prison food?
I mean, it's horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible.
My understanding is that they have to meet a calorie count. Like, they have to give you 2,000 calories a day, but they don't. It doesn't need to taste good.
Well, do you think they're going to put love in their food when they're cooking it? You know, cook it with love when they're cooking it, seasoned and all. No, you're not going to. Yeah, you're not going to get all that. But you do have guys that work in the kitchen, and they can hook their own stuff up. Yeah, they can cook the. You know, so I've always tried to make sure my resources was in it. That's important. You know,
so you take care of the guys who.
Yeah, no, to connect yourself with people with resources that, you know, because even in prisons, you know, if you don't know anybody, you're going to have a long, rough bit. It's going to be long and rough. But when you connect yourself with people, you'll find out where to get the sandwiches from and where to get the good seasoned stuff from. And but if you go on the line and just eat what the regular people the prison's going to give you, you're going to eat like regular food. It's, you know, it's no season. No, it's going to be bland. Yeah. It's going to be bland, regular food, because their job is to just feed you 3 hots in a cot. Yeah. That's all their job is, not in there to spoil you and season your food. Yeah.
You know, to people listening, hearing you say that the food is going to be bland, they might say, you know, like tough. But if you're doing 20 years in prison, having to eat food every day without any taste, that's gross to look at, that doesn't taste good, that's like another sentence on top of your time.
Well, you're just going to have to live out of commissary, meaning you're going to have to eat commissary. That takes money. Yeah. Commissary is not free. Right. So if you don't have a support system out in the street and society, somebody send you money on a regular. So just think about somebody that has 10, 15, 20 years. They're going to be asking, they're going to be calling home every Christmas. Well, not just no Christmas. You know, on Christmas, they're going to want the bonus money. I need the big check now. Yeah. But throughout the year, they're going to be sending you money for, you know, different things just to survive. Then when the holidays come, you know, they're going to want a bigger piece. Yeah. You know.
Aren't there jobs you can do in prison?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Did you have a job in there?
Well, I did, but I wasn't really big on jobs because I was hustling even when I was incarcerated. Hustling meaning, you know, what I would do when my father could send me like a lump sum piece of money, because I would get money in spurts, and it wouldn't be big pieces of money. It would be small pieces of change here and there. Mm-hmm. But when I did get a nice sum, you know, maybe $150 or something or whatever, I would go to the commissary and load up and get me some stuff, and then I would loan out my stuff, and I would try to flip it and store box it to keep it going. Mm-hmm. So I've always hustled, even when I was in and out, you know. So it got me in trouble, and I'm still in here doing it, because my mother used to tell me, she'd say, I'd be in there and she'd say, you better sit down somewhere. Meaning, I knew what that meant. You know, all our parents have sayings. Yep. And we read between the lines. We know what it means. Yeah. And she would just tell me, you know, boy, because I would get in trouble. I would call. I said, Mom, you send me a couple of dollars and I'm in the hole. I'm in, you know, because they have holes in prisons. And, you know, I would be in lockup, and she would say, what you doing there? Kevin, when you going to sit down? She would try to, you know, read the Bible to me and all this, and she would try to make deals with me. God rest her soul. My mom passed away. I did make it home, you know, in time to be able to catch her before my mom started.
What's all right?
You know, your parents, you know, they fight hard to take care of their kids, and you know, the best way to repay them would to try to be a good child, you know, try to, you know, go to school, do the things they ask you to do, go to school and, you know, and things like that. But getting back to, I want to elaborate on something that I kind of missed in reference to, you asked me, you know, how to survive in prison on it. You know, there's no good answer for that. There is no, you know, good answer for that. And I know the way I want to reword it, because you asked me, how do you prepare? you know, there is no way to prepare for it.
Sure.
You know, you're either built for it or you're not. Most people are not.
Yeah.
The average person is not built for it. Now, in my case, I had a little training before I came there.
Mm-hmm.
When I say training, meaning because I was out in the street acting, but it's way different than there.
Yeah.
So that little training, I thought I was getting among some school kids. It's going to be bigger criminals
Yeah.
and more tougher criminals in there. That's been there for a while, already been there with experience. Now they want to see where your experience is, because when you get there, you're going to have eyes on you, watching you. People can read you. People can read if you're really built for this and if you're not. So, you know, there's no way prepared for it, you know. So
Yeah. And there's, something we were just talking about during the break was sort of transitioning out of prison and coming home after your long stretch. But we wanted to ask, you know, you talked about your faith in God a few times and you know, some certain things are God's will. Did you have faith when you went into prison? Did you develop it? Was that something that came afterward? Like, what was that link like to God?
it was my parents, my parents, my mom, you know, she ended up getting saved.
Okay.
When I was in, you know, she wasn't always saved, but, you know, as the years went on, she got saved and she got really into, you know, God, and she started trying to pour it into me, which I wasn't listening at that time. But, you know, that's why I think I got so choked up.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that so many of us get the message late when they're gone.
Yeah.
Get the message while they're here. Listen to your parents. You know, they try to tell us things, and these are the people that bring you here and feed you and clothe you, and you know, when you're little, and they get you to this big, well, we grown people now, but they got us to this point, and you know, they're such an intricate, very important part of our lives, and I think we need to kind of understand and realize that, you know, they're not going to steer us wrong. And when they tell us things, and when I wish I would have listened more to my mom now, and that's probably, you know, holding some of the guilt is probably why I broke down, because I don't do this. I don't even know what happened. I know a feeling just sometimes, you know, you can't control stuff you're thinking, because I think I'm pretty tough. I don't know where that came from. I kind of know and I don't know. I didn't expect that.
And so early on, she gave you a sense of faith in God. And then obviously you weren't really practicing that, but did you have any of that when you were in prison?
No.
So was this after prison? Faith started to play a bigger role in your life?
Put it this way. I didn't really start kind of seeing things different until I came home this time. You know, my whole life has been criminal, tough guy, you know, or, you know, just that's just how it's been, you know, because in those places there's no room for no, you know, trying to be rational and nice, and, you know, because those guys, you know, people in the system, it's all kind of different personalities. You have people in there for so many different crimes and different things, and so you're going to encounter all kind of different personalities, you know, evil, good, humble, bad, mean, you know, snakes. You got manipulators, you know, you're going to just encounter all kinds of different personalities, and so, you know, there's no way to prepare for that. You know, you're either built for it or you're not. And most people, like I said again, are not.
One thing you were saying before the cameras were rolling that you were proud of was you sort of kept to your honor code. You never snitched on anybody or that sort of thing, right?
Never.
What happens to people inside prison? Do they go under protective custody if they like turn their friends in or members of their crew or whatever?
Well, there's options, you know. When you do, you know, for every action there's a reaction.
Sure.
You know, if you choose a certain kind of lifestyle and then you want to go against it, that's not good. And it's going to be solid people everywhere you go. It's going to be people that's going to maybe embrace it or accept it, and it's going to be people that's not going to accept it. Yeah. You know, if you present yourself to be a stand-up person and you got people that's going to look at you like that's how they want to see you and view you, and then once you do anything different, that's going to be a problem with people that, you know, see it differently. Yeah. So you always want to present yourself as who you really are, and, you know, because there's going to be people that's going to be watching you and saying, hey, man, and we thought you was a pretty cool, solid guy. And they're not going to tell you that, but they're watching you, and they're like, what he's doing is contrary to way he's acting. Mm-hmm. He's acting like a tough guy, but then when something happened, he flipped and he did this and he did that. And that means you're not built for it. So
You can't fake it in there.
can't
Is what
fake
you're
exactly,
saying. They can,
basic.
I mean, these guys, a lot of these guys, and you were probably this way too. You could read a person.
Yeah,
Like when you're out on the street doing crimes, like you could probably look a person in the eye and you're like, don't mess with that guy. I can mess with that guy.
I've gotten pretty good at that because you're going to have to learn how to read people.
Yeah.
If you're in those places, you're going to have to. I mean, because if you don't, it can cost you, more than you're willing to pay sometimes.
Yeah.
Not being able, you just have to pay attention.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to people, and it's going to help you in a lot of ways. It's going to help you to be able to get around a lot of stuff and to be able to see things in advance.
Yeah.
Sort
of look around corners. So when you got out this last time, did you just make the decision, hey, I'm done. I'm not going to do stuff that'll land me in prison anymore? Was it the faith that did it? Was it just being locked up so long? You had a kid and a grandkid. I'm not going to be away from these people anymore.
Well, my family, they pitched in. They helped. They helped to, take care of my daughter while I was away. And I knew that was a strong burden that I placed on them, and that's why I didn't expect a whole lot of money, because I'm not calling to ask for money. Hey, they doing me a big favor by taking care of my daughter that I left out there. That was my responsibility. But they did the best they could. They try to bring her to see me, when they can. That's money, them trips. My mom couldn't make those trips, a lot of those trips. And my dad worked, and he was the head of the household, so it wasn't nobody else taking care of the bills. So they didn't have time to come visit me every week or every 2 weeks. So it's times I didn't get visits for long periods of times. Matter of fact, I didn't really get a lot of visits. But when I did get them, they were always good because, I didn't get a chance to see my mom and my dad that much. And I really didn't expect a lot of visits because I knew that I put myself in this situation and I didn't want to inconvenience my parents by having them. So, I just send me a couple of dollars when you can.
Yeah.
When we started talking, you kind of defined yourself when you were younger as a street guy, right? A hustler, somebody not to be messed around with. All these years later, how would you define yourself?
That's a good question.
Well, I didn't say I was somebody not to mess around with, but I don't think no man wants to say that he's somebody to be played with,
Right.
But I would say that,
But there's guys who can enforce that, and there's guys who can't.
Yeah,
right?
Most definitely.
So
absolutely.
You were a guy who could probably enforce that.
Well, I definitely could enforce it. I didn't always win.
Yeah.
I didn't always come out on top. But I think
you didn't back down.
My reputation in the streets, kind of would back that up. Yeah, I'm gonna fight regardless. Win, lose, or draw. I think we all had our shares and battles of lost battles in life. Not necessarily all the time physical.
Sure.
But yeah, I've always stood up, and I think that it's important to kind of learn from the things that we should have been doing differently. I think when you look at it like, okay, you made some bad choices, you made some mistakes, but to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, see, that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
Because these are like over and over the same things, and you're not learning anything, and eventually, it's gonna go all the way left at some point. I think that my mom's prayers and praying for me, and prayer works. Prayer definitely works, and that made my faith strong in God, because my mom would always talk about God. I'd be like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But she would always tell me that God loves me, and she would just sometimes she would kind of con me into. I would ask for some money. She would say, I'm going to make a deal with, and this is, one time I talked and I asked her for some money, and she told me, she said, I just sent you some money not too long ago. And I told her, I said, I know, but, they having packages, because you can get packages in prison. Huh. And everybody was getting stuff, and, this and that. And I was in there doing my little hustling myself, but, it was near the holidays, and everybody was, they had families sending them money for different things, and they had this package that you can get, but you had to order it, so you had to have money on your account.
Oh, okay.
So that means I had to ask somebody to send me some money. So I was asking my mom some money. She was like, I don't have no more money. I sent you some money last week. I don't have it. She said, but I tell you what, if you promise me you're going to read your Bible This is a true story. She told me to read this Bible. God rest her. So I'm trying to. She told me to read this Bible. She said, if you read your Bible, I'm going to send you some change, you know. And so I said, all right, Mom. She said, okay, now you going to do it. And I said, yeah, Mom, I'm going to do it. She said, all right. You read this Bible. She said, I'll send you some. I'll send you, you know, she sent me a couple dollars, you know. And I didn't want to be like, even though she didn't know whether or not I'm going to do it, but I didn't want to like lie to my mother because I know, you know, in my spirit, I was like, no, she wanted, you know what I mean? Yep. So that's how I started like reading a little bit about the Bible. I read a little bit just to honor, you know, the fact that she asked me to do it. Mm-hmm. And she asked me to. And see, my mom was slick. She'll ask me, she'll say, well, what you read?
She's going to follow up.
Pop quiz.
She's definitely going to follow up.
So, yeah, you know. And so one of my favorites, well, is Proverbs. That's one of the most, I'm not all that familiar, but I kind of know Proverbs a little bit. Mm-hmm. My brother, and he'd give me some stuff out of Proverbs, and my mom used to give me stuff from Proverbs. And so I just go in there and just, you know, just read stuff. She would give me some specific stuff sometimes. I don't remember a lot of it because it was, you know, it was a while ago. But, yeah, Proverbs.
The thing I like about Proverbs, the book of the Bible, is that there's 31 chapters in it, so it's like one for every day. And, you know, it's practical stuff you can use. Yeah. That's always been, it's easy to read, you know, because they're not that long for me, and I'm not a big reader. But, yeah, I always like Proverbs.
You know, we've talked about this on the show in the past, but probably about 16 months ago, we got robbed at my house. It was a big burglary, big time, in Maryland. And I mean, the guy took everything. It's almost like he knew what was the most sentimental stuff in our house. Rings, you know, like family heirlooms, that kind of stuff. Things I bought for my wife for anniversaries. Of course, he stole guns, right? Because why not? And really just smashed up the house. And I don't know quite how to put this. I don't even know. They think they know where he is, but Maryland legal system being what it is right now, they kind of let this man go and say, hey, just come back on your court date. Of course, he didn't come back.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But I got to say this after talking with you. I still want this guy to have a punishment for his crime. Because my wife, she couldn't sleep in the house for weeks. She always, every noise was something. And I was actually the one who discovered that the house had been broken into. So I still want this guy to face some kind of justice. But after talking to you a little bit, you kind of get a sense like, where'd this guy come from? What was his upbringing? What was he like? You know, does this guy, when he's 16, and they know who he is, he's not old. He's probably in his 20s or 30s. Like when he's 61, is he going to be talking about his faith and talking about his, you know, path to redemption? And so I don't want to say this man shouldn't, you know, pay for his crime, but it does make me think a little bit about like, who's this guy going to be in 20 years? You know, who can he be? What will he be saying about his youth when he was breaking into people's homes and doing God knows what? Because, he's just like you. He's in the DMV because they have this guy's rap sheet. They know he's been in D.C. and Virginia. You know, I think he's been as far as Kentucky, but in the DMV area.
And all crimes. Records are public information.
Yeah. And so it's just, I want him to pay for his crime. But after talking to you, it makes me think, what's he going to be saying when he's in his 60s? Who is he going to miss? You know, who's he going to be like thinking, well, I wasted all this time doing that when I could have been with my family. So that's my takeaway from talking with you today.
Yeah, just really appreciate you coming in, sharing your story and your perspective on things. It's quite a bit different than, you know, Phil and I are always interested in this stuff and hearing people's stories, and it's so unique, and we just really appreciate it.
Well, I didn't expect to kind of get emotional. I didn't see that coming. Maybe that was something that needed to come out. I don't know. Maybe I never got a chance to really mourn my mom. Yeah. And just so mentioning it, talking, I guess, I was talking about her in such a fondness in a way that it kind of made me feel some things. It made me feel like, sometimes maybe I think I let her down a little bit before she left. But, I think she got a chance to see me do some good before she did that. Because I did come home in time enough to, wasn't hurt, when she was in her right state of mind, because, down the line she started getting sick and, her health started deteriorating, and so and she started forgetting stuff, and and I would go to see, and by me being the most problem child, the one that stayed in the most, I used to go see her and visit her, and I would talk to her, and even though, excuse me, she wouldn't respond sometimes a lot, and she didn't never say much, but I always felt like she could hear me though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she just couldn't like really express it, but I just knew in my spirit that she hears me.
You bet.
So,
Kevin, thank you. How old are your grandkids? You have 2 grandkids?
Yeah, I got, with my wife, and also, I really have maybe probably close to 10, probably.
Wow.
Okay. I was close to it, because with them, I have 2 biological from my daughter,
Sure.
and then my wife, she has, 3 kids, and they have kids, which are my grandkids, so it's like a lot.
That's a big family.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's good.
But they're all grown now,
right.
pretty much. Not grown, but they're like teenagers and in college.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Everybody's doing pretty good. So yeah,
that's great.
And I hope nobody never see me in here crying. See nobody. I hope just don't see nobody see certain people see this, because I've never done that. I don't know what came over me. I was like, I never do that. I've never done that. But
well, you were just telling the truth.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Kevin, we're
honored to have you.
We're really honored to have you here.
Appreciate you sharing your
I was
story.
glad to be able to come in
Learned a lot.
and elaborate in any way I could have helped. I'm glad to be able to kind of share some things that could possibly, help somebody else, or deter somebody from being able to go through all that stuff. Because trust me, I can't undo it, but it's done. But I wouldn't advise nobody to try to follow that path,
Sure.
because you see where it led me.
Yeah. Well said. All right.
Thanks a lot. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Tiffany.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you coming by.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.